the basil of the house, the caring, sensible, loving wife, the first woman to embrace Islam, the mother of the believers, Khadijah bint Khuwaylid. Khadijah was loyal to her new husband, and he found in her a loyal wife. So he was devoted to her and gave her his heart just as Atiq had given her his heart before. This husband was a sensible, bold, and generous man. He had a lot of money and extensive trade. Khadijah shared his opinion just as she shared Atiq's opinion. She advised him and he consulted her. Happiness shaded their home. People began to look at his house and see in it the most luxurious and well-managed home. And they began to look at the work of this husband and see in it the best and the most organized work. When houses and the best women were mentioned, the name of At-Tamim's house was the first one to be used as a proverb. A year had not passed until the bonds of that love were strengthened by the bond of the boy, whom the Arabs desire, for whom they marry frequently, long for if they do not have one, and find in the deprivation of him a stinging pain. Their son Hala became the comfort of their eyes, and Khadijah was able to take care of him. So she became a role model in Mecca in raising children, just as she was a role model in husband's care. These circumstances increased an-Nabash's activity and love for life, so his goodness increased, his work expanded, and money flowed to him, in addition to his abundant wealth and goodness. Khadijah called him Abu Hala, and people called him by that name, so he loved it and was happy with it. Then the year passed, and the second year came, witnessing a second son, whose father named him Hind, and his joy increased. So he gave to the poor and the necessitous. He circumambulated Al-Kaaba, giving thanks to Allah who had multiplied his offspring. He became more attached to Khadijah and feared the evil of the envious, who envy people and harm them in their money, children, and lives. Khadijah also feared that this happiness would not last for her, and that fate had prepared something for her in the unseen world that would diminish this blessing for her. Whenever goodness flowed, her fear intensified. She was thinking while fate was watching and planning. Then it attacked this happiness and suddenly snatched Abu Hala from its middle, leaving Khadijah once again without a husband. So she tasted again what she had tasted before. Abu Hala's death was one wound upon another. Her tears did not dry up, and her agony did not ease. She did not pay attention to that great wealth that Abu Hala had left behind, and she asceticized in this life in which happiness does not last and joy does not remain. Whenever she remembered money, she mocked it and said to herself in sadness, "Did money benefit Abu Hala and to prevent death from him? Did money benefit Atiq and save him from the claws of mortality?" Then she used to look at her two sons and daughter and remember their orphanage. Sadness tore her heart until her body became weak and her face turned yellow. She was unable to move and remained in bed. The silence of sorrow descended upon her home. This shock was not to Khuwaylid's heart less than it was to Khadijah's and her mother's hearts. So signs of sadness appeared on him. He began visiting Khadijah in her house every day with patience, trying not to tell her what was in his heart, taking care of her much money, directing her late husband's business, playing with her children, and talking to her a lot to make her forget what she was suffering. But Khadijah's grief was severe, and her illness became more severe, until Khoylid feared that she was doomed. So he and her mother cooperated in nursing her. They began urging her to have mercy on herself and to forget something from what she was in, for the sake of her young children who needed the mother's heart and care. Her mother said to her whenever she found an opportunity to speak, "Your devotion, O Khadijah, to your two husbands exceeds all sincerity. But fate, my daughter, has chosen you to take their place, so you have a great duty. You have to raise these children and take care of them until each of your husbands be at peace in his grave and their souls be satisfied with you, just as each of them was satisfied with you in his life. And who will take care of your children after you and after their parents? Would you be satisfied if they were thrown to someone other than a father or a mother?" She did not leave her until she created in her heart the feeling that she had become in the place of her husbands, and that she had to fulfill the mission that had been placed upon her. So she began to recover little by little, until she was able to leave the bed. And Khuwaylid ran her business, took the place of her husband, and did not miss her home for an hour. But aging had taken its toll on him, so Khadijah was afflicted with his loss one day. It was a third wound in her heart, which increased her pain more and made her sadness more intense, and she began to think about her situation and what was meant for her in this life. In a house close to hers, there was a woman like her, Amina bint Wahb. Her husband died shortly after their wedding, leaving a baby in her belly. So she refused to get married, and she gave herself to her son, Muhammad. She became the talk of the people for her loyalty, patience, and sincerity. Her son reached the age of 6, and she was continuing with her determination to live for her son alone. Khadijah was determined to be like Amina, patient and sacrificial, and live for her children alone. She did not respond to those of the Quraysh masters and youths who asked for her hand. She threw from her heart the idea of marriage and rejected every suitor. She set out to advance her trade and manage her affairs on her own. She saw that she would benefit from hiring men who would travel with her trade. So she carried on her husband's trade as it was, making her children, her money, and her extensive business her main concern. Khadijah's trade progressed, as did the trade of her husband's. She became opinionated in financial affairs. One night, a strange thing happened to her that made her rush to the house of her cousin Waraq ibn Nawfal to consult him. But we will leave that story for the next time.